Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to welcome everybody to this afternoon session. Wanted to introduce my good friend, Christy Atkinson, who's been a partner with us for the last couple of years. When I recently moved back to Birmingham to help run the Birmingham office, I had the opportunity to meet Christy at an outing at a Birmingham Barons game. We kind of hit it off. She shared her mission. We shared our mission. And through one of our business partners, kind of through that connection, we had the opportunity to sit down and take a look and really kind of bring a partnership together. It's been a great pleasure to work with Christy and glad to have her here with us this afternoon to share all the information that she can.
Thank you, Philip.
I'll turn that over to Tara.
Thank you very much, Philip. So I want to just, Philip, you're going to disappear in like a few seconds. But while we're waiting for Philip to disappear, I wanted to just acknowledge the song that, there he goes, bye, Philip. I want to acknowledge the song that was playing. Our team takes a lot of pride in finding songs that match the mission of the what we're spotlighting for this month, and that song was by James Ian, and it was called Spaces, and it is for and by the disabled community, and it highlights spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA, which James, who is the singer, has. And actually, if you take a look at the video for the song, again called Spaces, he features other people who are suffering from the same disability or living and surviving with the same disability. So please feel free to take a look at it, everyone. Christy, I'm going to introduce you. It's always the part where I read your long bio and people just wait and listen to the act. They do that, but they just kind of get ready. So the theme for our National Disability Employment Awareness Month, or NDEAM as it's called, is called Accessible by Design, where innovation meets inclusion. And Christy, you are the Executive Director of Workshop Empowerment, Inc. What I love about that title, and we'll talk a little bit about this more, is that where there are advancements and accommodations for the disabled community tends to benefit everybody. And some of those advancements have become just a part of our everyday life. And so when we think about inclusion, we forget, sometimes it's easier to forget that inclusion really benefits everybody. And I think you see that a lot in this population. So Christy Atkinson is the Chief Executive Officer of Workshop Empowerment, Inc., a historic Birmingham-based nonprofit founded in 1900. I'll pause on that because I had my team go back to double check that we had that right. Totally sure.
Yes.
But it's
Yes.
right. It is. So founded in 1900, that provides vocational training, job placement, and wraparound support for individuals with disabilities and other barriers to employment. Since assuming leadership in 2023, Christy has guided the organization through major facility renovations, expanded partnerships with employers, and represented We, Inc. at a 2025 Disability Policy Seminar in Washington, D.C. Prior to this role, you served as the executive director of Mechanical Craft Training Institute, where you launched training programs in the skilled trade sector, as the director of workforce development at Hardy Corporation, where you developed apprenticeships and recruitment initiatives. Previously, you worked in K through 12 education, higher education, nonprofit administration, including as the principal of the Helen Keller School at the Alabama Institute for the Deaf and Blind and the director of special education for the Birmingham City Schools. You, my friend, are no slouch. And so you have your PhD in education, or your EDD in educational leadership from Stanford University, as well as multiple, I'll pause on that, multiple master's degrees in counseling and education. You're also a professional counselor, a certified work development professional, and you hold certifications in vocational evaluation forensics, nonprofit executive leadership, and digital marketing for nonprofit. You're also active in professional organizations, including the Alabama Association of Nonprofits, the National Association of Work Development Professionals, and the Birmingham Business Alliance. You are a first-generation college grad, as am I, from Walker County, Alabama, and you are passionate, as it is obvious, about inclusive work development and expanding opportunities for marginalized communities. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It is my honor.
Yes. I have probably said this at every one of these sessions that we've done this year, but I'll just say it again. I really love that we are showcasing our clients through these events. It gives us these Heritage and Awareness Months, give us a really great opportunity to look in at our clients and understand their passion and mission about what they do, which ultimately, I joke, but no, ultimately feeds us, right? So your passion and the work that you do with us is really could not happen. Our work here could not happen if you didn't believe in us. And so I really get great joy of being able to give those who may not deal with our clients, which is a lot of people, the people who are figuring out the money in and the money out, and the technology that powers this place, don't get to meet a you. So I really love that we get to bring home who we all work for, and we do work for you through these kinds of forums. So again, I appreciate that you took the time to be with us here today.
Yes, and that feeding is reciprocal because of your services. My team is able to plan for their future and have a more secure future. So it is definitely a beneficial relationship on both sides.
That's the way it should be.
Yes.
So we spent some time together when we did our prep call. And I always like to just hear people's stories. How do people develop their passions? And so when we were on the call, our prep call, you talked to us about watching your family member, I'll let you decide if you want to say who it was, struggle after becoming disabled from a work accident. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background beyond what I said and how that experience led you to be so dedicated for championing the rights of people with disabilities.
Yes. So thank you once again. It's such a pleasure to join you all today. And I love this first question because it allows me to give tribute to probably the most influential person on earth in my life, even still today. And so back in, I will not give the date because that will definitely give away my age, but
what's 1900 though? You have not been around since the inception of the organization, I assume.
No, I do, as is the wisdom that I might have earned. I am not 125-year-old wisdom. So I think I've held up well, but for 125 if so. But no, my father back many decades ago in the 1900s, just not that far back, not the early 1900s, but he was part of a community in Walker County, a very poor, very poverty-stricken area, part of the Appalachia area, as I have recently become refamiliarized with. But he was looking for jobs. He had been in the military, gotten out. He fell back into the same pattern that most individuals in these counties in northern Alabama had, and that was coal mining. And so he came from a long line of coal miners. His father had passed away from black lung, and but he felt like this was the only path that he had, to be able to earn a living for his family. And so he was coal mining and was in what would be considered a low seam. And for those of you who are not familiar with coal mining, be thankful. But a low seam is actually just very far underground, and those would probably be about 2 feet tall. They would tunnel in. And he was securing the ceiling so that other miners could come in behind him, and the ceiling collapsed before the machine that he was working with and himself could get it secured. And I could go on and on about the details, but they did not expect him to live. He was pulled from the mine after many hours, and no one else was injured, but his back was broken. And they told him he would never walk again, and he was determined that that was not going to be the case. And went through a series of fights from the very beginning. decades ago, there was not the kind of partnerships and support systems that we have today. So it was very much, him and my closest family members rallying behind him. And I was very young. So I only remember bits and pieces. I remember the rehab. I remember the struggles. We had to go on social assistance. I remember my mother sitting in the parking lot of the food stamp office in Walker County, crying because of the situation and the embarrassment that she felt and the hardship of all of that. So very early on, I saw the grit and determination. I saw the pain as well and the struggle, and just all the while growing up, that really got into my deep soul, and being able to take the blessings that I had, because as terrible as that was, it really set my family on a different trajectory. He became a computer programmer. We moved out of that area, and it really set me up to be able to get the education that he had always wanted for himself. And we were able to I was able to channel that dream, and really gave back in what I wanted to do for a living, and did that through education and nonprofit work, and it's how it evolved today.
There's a saying a friend of mine has said, especially when you're down, and it says, and she always said, sometimes your setback can be your largest setup. And it sounds like that is what happened in your father's case. The setback became the setup for him to take a different pathway. And
Absolutely.
that also is an amazing lesson to learn so young. So the theme of NDEAM is celebrating talent and value. And it reminds us the importance of contributions of all our workers. And I'd probably say the same thing. I love data. And so we pulled some data. The recent data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics for 2024 to 2025 show that only 22.7 people with disabilities are employed, compared to 65.5% of those without disabilities. So they're employed. And then the unemployment rate, so those who are looking for jobs who can't find jobs for people with disabilities, is 8.6% versus 4.3% without, so double for those who are looking and can't find it. What do you think are some of the key factors behind the disparity and the barriers that continue to persist? So what are the barriers? What are the barriers you think? And then what are the things, and we'll probably reference your own organization, what are the things that you find are most helpful in overcoming some of those barriers?
Yes. So as I was thinking about this, I think it really boils down to three areas, and that's access, perception, and preparedness. And so I've had, with my experience in education, I can kind of speak to the beginnings of working with individuals living with disabilities from a very young age, and now with what I do into full adulthood and into even an elder state. So I think with access, that's really still a structural issue. Many individuals still lack reliable transportation, access to any kind of assistive technology, or any inclusive workplaces. We've come so far in a very short amount of time from having an institutional type setup to really bringing individuals who are facing disabilities, of whether that be intellectual or mental or physical type situations. We've really come a long way, but we still have a ways to go. And individuals, I think one of the biggest challenges we have here in our metro area is a lack of an effective transit system. So individuals can't even get to work, much less get to be able to get groceries or even to get to a doctor's appointment. So some of those systemic barriers. I think that that also comes into equitable access to training and job opportunities. They're often discounted before they even get to the table or even get to a point where they could have a conversation with someone. And so that underemployment or unemployment continues. I think perception is a huge barrier still. When I was in school, kind of dates me, but individuals, once they reached high school level, depending on their level of disability, they were not allowed to continue in high school. They were sent to alternative programs. And that really sets people back. It is a systemic issue, as many of the issues we face in our country are systemic. That misconception, though, about the productivity, the reliability, the cost of how much accommodations would actually cost a business, those are all things that shape employer attitudes and societal attitudes. Perception also impacts the individuals themselves. And I'm going to tell a very brief story about that, but years of being underestimated can lead to what I call learned helplessness. And I think that's the biggest crippling factor, not only for individuals with disabilities, but individuals that are living in poverty. People begin to internalize the idea that they are less capable, that they are, or that success is always dependent upon others who might mediate for them instead of something they can change within themselves. And many educational societal systems just continue to reinforce this by doing.
What way? Tell me, in what way do they do that?
Yes, so by doing things for individuals with disabilities instead of teaching them to do it for themselves. And this often starts off in a very, it's not a malicious way. It starts off in a way of, oh, we have that empathy or that sometimes that pity. And so we want to jump in and help. And that's some of the worst things that can happen. And so when you see that starting early in a family, there's some guilt that's associated with that in families often. And they just want to, you know, help their children. And then they get to school and teachers have this sense of empathy and compassion. And so they just, the learned helplessness continues. So why would someone learn to do it themselves if it's always being done for them? But then we reach a day where that isn't helpful at all, and it's a huge hindrance. So to truly empower individuals, we need to set those clear expectations. We need to provide meaningful training. We need to allow space for accountability and independence. Just pretending that what someone does is okay, even if it isn't helpful. It doesn't develop the grit and resilience that all of us need to be able to be successful individuals in life. And we need to have these safe spaces, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, hopefully, safe space to succeed and to fail, where it's not, it's something that individuals can practice. And that's something all of us have needed at one point in our lives, and that to really excel in a professional way, we've had those spaces or those opportunities. And that's how, once again, we develop that resilience through that real experience. And often perception can also intersect with a visible and physical differences. So some individuals have just a physical disability that affects movement or speech, and it leads others to wrongly assume that somehow it's a loss of intellect or ability. And these biases can be just as damaging as the physical barriers themselves. And until we address how society perceives ability by emphasizing a true look at strength and skill and humanity over just assumptions that we make, we're not going to be able to close that employment gap. We have a young man that we have worked with here. He is 16. He was part of a summer program that we offer and was just the most unbelievable worker I've ever encountered. Didn't want to take breaks, didn't want to stop for lunch, just wanted to keep on working. He was adopted 5 years ago from China, did not speak English when he got here, but he does live with cerebral palsy, and it impacts him on both sides of his body, and it deeply impacts his speech. And he was actually our Governor Workforce Youth of the Year and was recognized earlier this week. But one of the most poignant stories he shared with me, he said, people think that I can't think. And he said, because my speech is so hindered by my body, the physicalness of my body. He said, but I'm very smart. He said, I learned English in, less than a year. He said, and I have a great grasp of it. He said, but you can't tell that when you talk with me because of my disability. And it was just really such a wake-up call to have that conversation with him, that just because physically he is not able to present himself as what we would typically attribute to someone who could be a powerful force on our team, he's we're really underestimating him, and we're underestimating ourselves and our workplaces. And then I think that final step, I mentioned preparedness. And I think the fragmented systems that we have, where every area is working in a silo instead of coming together in a succinct, cohesive manner, where we're talking about developing training that is directly leading to competitive employment. What do employers need, and how can we set up systems starting in school, moving into training systems that provide that? And we know there's workforce needs. We just need to be able to come together enough to be able to bridge gaps by providing hands-on skill development, paid internships, strong employer partnerships, so that our participants, the people in our community, the individuals, our families, can build both technical competence and confidence to transition successfully into the workforce.
I love the 3 points in the way that you broke it down. I'm wondering, maybe just to double click on one thing. You mentioned kind of systemic hindrances, and I think that it's hard to react to systemic influences because they're so systemic.
Right. And it's hard to notice them. Yes.
Hard to notice them. So and I know this is coming from left field, not left field, but I had talked about this. But maybe can you talk a little bit about some of the systemic challenges that you find your participants face, or parents of your participants face?
So I mentioned the transportation. That's huge. Oftentimes due to physicality issues, if someone has low vision or blindness, even if they're hard of hearing or have deafness, those are things that inhibit them from driving. Individuals who may have some learning disabilities or some intellectual disabilities, that's going to prohibit them from driving. And we really take that for granted. We live in a country that does not have a great transit system overall compared to other countries, and it is a huge limiting factor. Also, some of our accessibility and ways that people can get around, even if they're close enough to where they could walk. If you think about the way that our traffic systems are often set up, it's also a systemic issue. And then just the lack of being able to in the past, having more of an institutional expectation, and we'll talk a little bit more later about sheltered workshops. And so in the history of our country, we've just assumed that if you have a disability, we're going to place you in this little box, and that really has been detrimental. Those are all some of those systemic issues. Yeah. And there are many more, but I could go on all day.
So I want to give a little bit of a shout out to, we do Spotlight. So we interview a speaker, but we also do a written piece that kind of highlights notable figures and notable dates, notable happenings, and references kind of some reading that people can do about the particular topic. You talked about a day where you got to high school and you didn't go any further. There's someone that we highlighted in our Spotlight who I can't remember who was one of the first, I want to say, blind and mute PhD recipients in a particular topic. I can't remember what it was, but I do want to give a shout out to remind people to read it, because we do really put some interesting facts in there. One other thing I want, maybe this is just a sentence before I ask you the next question about working, but the idea of perception is an interesting one. When children are so honest, and when someone is different, children stare and ask why. And they don't stare and ask why with from a negative perspective. They really just want to know. And adults, curiosity. Yeah. And curiosity, and not in a malignant type of way, but just curious. Tell me more. And as you get to be an adult, you stop. You think it's bad manners to stare, or you think, well, it is bad manners to stare, in a way that's staring, but right. It's bad manners to ask. You think it's bad manners to wait for the person that you talked about that's in your program who won the award to be able to articulate. You don't want to look at them, you don't want to talk to them, so you just put them to the corner and you don't even see them. And so as a parent, that's exactly the opposite of what a kid does. And a kid engages. And somewhere along the way, as adults, we tell ourselves we're not supposed to see the differences. We're not supposed to acknowledge the differences. And by doing that, you ignore and really miss the beauty and the skills of someone like who you highlighted have.
Yes, yes. And individuals living with disabilities, they really want to tell their story. They want you to see them and then be able to share with you, this is who I am. This is what I can do. And yeah, so I encourage you to, as individuals, to reach out, to be inquisitive in a caring way, in a respectful way, to just as you would if you were meeting someone at a dinner party and you wanted to know more about them. What do you do? What's your family like? What are your dreams? What are your passions? Because everybody has that.
Yeah. So let's talk about AI. I don't know how one could have a conversation and not talk about AI. It's clearly rapidly changing the way that we work, and I think for good. Not all, with technology you get good and bad, but the whole point of technology is to move you forward. So I'm wondering, how do you see AI influencing the way that you work actually around training and development for individuals with disabilities? How is it helping to enhance accessibility and learning outcomes? What's your take on AI and inclusive technologies?
Yes. So I think it is a classic yin and yang, good and bad. So it brings great opportunity, but it also presents some pretty big challenges for us in some ways that we may not have considered. And it's coming at us so quickly that it's really hard to digest all of it and to really make some of the great decisions and setting boundaries and those kind of things as it comes so quickly. I think we saw that negatively with our youth, with social media, and presenting so many different challenges that we never envisioned before and never had to face. But on the positive side, for us, AI has allowed us to really personalize learning and train like never before. At Workshops Empowerment, we see the enormous potential in tools that can quickly generate our picture schedules and task analysis and visual supports. And I apologize, the headphones are a little problematic. I know people are getting tired of seeing me do that. So
what
my
you're
apologies.
saying is so interesting, they're not even noticing your hands. Don't worry about it.
Well, you're kind. I'm going to try to keep that tucked back. But it's so many things that would take us hours or even days to do. These picture schedules, the task analysis, they're really sometimes laborious, but AI is really enabled us to do that and design it very quickly. Resources that once again, that took so long, now we have those in minutes. And it gives our instructors more time so they can really focus on that one-on-one, the coaching, the mentoring, the reinforcement of those skills. We've already seen so many different opportunities in adaptive learning platforms, virtual reality simulations we use through our Oculus transfer program. It's amazing. Even wearable technology, so individuals who are not able to read, they can wear eyeglasses that look like just regular spectacles and it reads for them. This is powerful, just a game changer in so many ways. Speech to text virtual assistants that customizes how an individual learns and helps them to develop their skills. And for We Inc., AI helps individualize the instruction. It helps identify learning patterns of individuals, and it removes barriers with the trainees that we have. They are very easy to adapt to an individual's pace, which is really great. It's the best kind of inclusion and one-on-one instruction. And it creates customized learning environments as well. When it's used intentionally, AI has the power to reduce barriers and promote true inclusion in classroom and workplace settings. But there are some negatives that we are also seeing. And one of the biggest is that many of the individuals that we serve are trying to get into entry-level or routine jobs. And those jobs are being turned into now AI managed, AI performed work tasks. And we've seen that recently with some warehouse jobs, even at Amazon. That was a recent news blast that came out. So that concerns us because humans are being replaced by machines and algorithms. And so that's concerning. And it also is forcing us in good ways to think about workforce preparation. Okay, what do we need to do? And in this day and age, this means that we need to partner, which is a good thing, even more with our employers. What is this going to look like down the road? And continue to train people for roles that depend on creativity, certain problem-solving skills, and human connection. And this is areas where individuals with disabilities really excel when given the opportunity. I think my biggest concern with AI, and this is something we're still grappling with in our society, is that AI reflects the perspectives and biases of those who design it.
Of the coders.
The coders. So if people with disabilities are not part of the design, the testing, the feedback, the technology may unintentionally exclude or misrepresent their needs.
Yeah.
And that's not just for individuals with disabilities, that's for any of us that are grappling with social justice as a whole, and those of us who've been misrepresented in the past. So to ensure that fairness, companies must intentionally build diverse teams, including individuals living with disabilities, to guide that development of those systems. And AI should not replace that human element. It should only amplify human potential, but we have to be very careful on how we trust it and how we enable it to do the jobs that we're asking it to do. I think when developed thoughtfully and inclusively, it's a powerful equalizer. It moves us closer in a world where ability, not limitation, defines opportunity, but we just must do that intentionally, ethically, and ensure that we have diverse voices at the table while we're allowing it to come into our lives and into our workforce.
Yeah, it's a really difficult conundrum that we're in, because I do think that when used properly, it takes away some of the rote and routine work and allows you to kind of have next level thinking, right? And so the tasks that were manual, now instead of taking time to do the manual tasks, you can actually take the time to read the analysis of that work and think about how you use it. That being said, there is a population of people who, for that work itself, is their work, and we got to figure out, right, how do you thread that needle. Do you have I'm again, I'm going off script a little bit here, but
no problem.
But I know you're involved with quite a few. You mentioned that you were at this forum, the Disability 2025 Disability Policy Seminar. Are these kinds of conversations being had? Who's having them? Who's leading them? Who's thinking about this from a macro perspective?
So many of us are, but many of us are not being invited to the table to have the discussion. So if you think about the organizations and the companies who are creating AI, at this time, they are not strategically reaching out to those of us who might have these concerns. And as my greatest concern is that how quickly it's moving. And if you think about technological innovations in the past, they've all come at us pretty quickly, especially in the last 25 to 30 years. But I've never seen one come on as quickly as AI.
Yeah.
So it's a pause for concern. I love technology. I love innovation, but I do think as everyday citizens, we need to be weighing these things cautiously.
Yeah,
and
we need the right people at the table, don't we?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. I will, this is such an engaging conversation, so thank you. I don't know if any of the listeners have questions, but I'll remind everyone, if you have a question or a comment, any of the above, feel free to put it in. When I did this NDEAM last year or the year before, or at some point, we said that we feature many of the I'll call them the major heritage and awareness months, some of which will, people can be allies of, but won't ever join that group. This National Disability Employment Awareness Month is something all of us will at some point, in some way will impact us personally, whether it is just the fact that I wear glasses or something like at a most basic level, or as we get older, the disabilities that come with just age, or disabilities that are unseen that people are battling with that we won't ever know, or those who are seen. And so this conversation, I think, I feel like all of our conversations, we can all find something to take away from, whether it's as an ally or as a member of that group. But this one, I feel like, feels so personal should really be personal to everyone that's listening. So let's talk a little bit about your programs. So you have several programs your organization offers. We Made, the Horizons program, Constructive Pathway, and the Empower Cafe. Can you share what these programs do? And is a little bit of a leading question, so I'm going to lead the question. Speak to the confidence and skill building and the sense of community participants feel. So that's leading, because I'm assuming that they're all those things, but I know they are.
Yes.
The sense of confidence, skill building, and sense of community your participants feel by participating. Anita wrote this in these wonderful programs. So I'm going to also say that they are wonderful programs.
I received that. Thank you.
Take it all. We wrote it for you. So tell me about the programs and tell me about the participants' engagement and what it does for them.
Yes. So I am, you're going to see me, I'm going to refer to my notes, because if not, I will talk at just tremendous lengths. So I'm going to try to keep us
at some point. So you can at some point, Lawrence will come on and tell us to stop. But
exactly. So I want to make sure that we cover everything that needs to be covered. But all of our programs share one mission, and that is empowerment through expectation, design, inclusion, and opportunity. So I'm going to take a step back, because the programs that are listed are pieces of greater programs. So we really have three pathways here at Workshops. So 10 years ago, Workshops Empowerment was just workshops, and it operated as a traditional sheltered workshop where individuals with disabilities worked apart from the community. They were paid based on the level of productivity of what they could produce in a day. And it was a system born from good intentions, but really limited by low expectations of the population as a whole. Thankfully, we've learned so much since then, and we have really continued to move societally and through our vocational programs. So now we are looking at effective training, person-centered learning, and what true inclusion looks like. So when I joined We Inc. 3 years ago, they were already on a new trajectory to really be able to change the course of how we were going to transform our community and the individuals we serve. So together we built a new vision that was grounded in research, innovation, and community connection. And I hope that you'll see that modeled throughout each of the programs I'm going to tell you about. So our first really big program change was what we call Empower Pathways. So now we not only serve individuals with disabilities, but we bring in anyone who is facing a barrier, whether that be substance abuse recovery, transportation, homelessness, because we see that there's a lot of overlap amongst the disability community and some of these other communities that might be seen as on the fringe. So we open that up for everyone. So our Pathways program builds in, and I'm going to refer to my notes because, like I said, I'll talk all day, is a continuum of job readiness training, hands-on skill development, and paid internships. So our participants begin in the job readiness class in our work simulation lab before entering our internships that cover our custodial services here, our reception services, security services, or through one of our social enterprises, which I believe is one of the most unique parts of our nonprofit. All the while they earn workforce credentials and certifications that they can take and transfer out into the competitive job market. So We Made is one of our social enterprises, and that's where our participants craft eco-friendly products. So fire starters, room sprays, stinky dog sprays, insect sprays, while learning production, packaging, and retail operations. And we also have a line of baking mixes. And it was actually the baking mixes, those are the things that fuel our Empower Cafe, which is an open to the public cafe here in Birmingham, where participants gain front and back of house experiences depending on what their career passion is. And they learn customer service, teamwork, confidence, and they also gain those food handling credentials, as well as serve safe credentials to move out into the workforce. We also have an affirmative business enterprise, which offers our commercial contracts for local businesses for kitting and hand assembling, and it allows participants to earn wages while they master warehouse, forklift, and order fulfillment skills. And we've also expanded to reach out to other nonprofits in our area. And this is what I think I'm most excited about. I think paid internship is critical, but I think partnering with other nonprofits, especially in this day and age with some of the challenges that we're facing, is very vital. So we have a child care certification pathway. We do the credentialing here, but then individuals go to a local nonprofit that houses mothers and their children who are facing domestic violence situations. They have a child care center there. So the individuals here, we transport them to that facility where they get their internship skills met through that program. So it's not only building community, but it's also building skill sets, and then they can go out and work in the competitive market in childcare. We also have a partnership with Build Up, which is another nonprofit, to teach construction-based certification skill training here. So the individuals, kind of harkens back to my past at MACD. So individuals can gain construction skill sets, and then they can get jobs out in the construction field, which in this area is booming. And then coming this spring, we're also going to be opening up our horticulture program, which will not only provide fresh vegetables and fruit for our restaurant, but local restaurants, and then have individuals prepared to get jobs in our landscaping through different city organizations, our municipalities, as well as parks, and even in garden centers around the area. So after these successful internships, not only are individuals building their resume, they're building stamina, they're building experience in a safe environment where they can succeed and fail with pathway navigators there to pull in and support them. But then we help them with job search and then provide job supports as we partner with our employers. So let's say that an individual gets hired, but something is new that they may need to expand their skill sets on, or let's say that they're still struggling in some areas, we will step in, send our team out to be able to work with them and partner for the needs of the employer. And so that's one of our areas. We also have our Empower Horizons program. And so each of our programs are funded through different fundings, diversified funding. So some of it's through state entities, which are supported through federal entities. And we've been holding our breath on many of those lately. But United Way of Central Alabama also funds us. And then we also, the social enterprises, any funding that we get through these social enterprises, we funnel directly back into the program. So it's a very complex funding structure. But our Horizons program, and let me make sure that I don't keep going. Our Horizons program.
To ask you after that, someone asked, but keep going.
Okay, fabulous. Focuses on individuals who may need really more intensive skill development and support before they enter the competitive employment marketplace. So at the heart of this program is our PAYS Lab, which is our practical assessment exploration system, which I love. This is the third entity that I have partnered with PAYS Lab on putting one in. It is a hands-on simulated work environment. It's designed to help participants explore their career interests, assess their strengths, and build essential work behaviors in a structured, supported setting. And it also gives us a really great insight into the accommodations or modifications that an individual may need to be able to enter the workforce. So within the PAYS Lab, participants rotate through multiple workstations. It replicates real-world jobs across career areas, such as business and computer technology, custodial services, consumer services, processing and production, and construction trades. And each task is designed to assess not only the technical ability, but also work habits, such as attendance, focus, persistence, communication, and quality of performance. As the individuals progress through the PACE lab, we collect data, we identify skill levels, learning styles, potential barriers. So it's functioning as a training tool and a vocational assessment. But the assessment is really sneaky. Individuals don't know they're being assessed, which is really great. Once participants demonstrate the readiness that they need, they transition into community-based internships and career exploration opportunities from guidance with a pathway navigator that goes out into the community with them. So I think this is one of the most beautiful examples. We have a variety of them, but one of our first partners was the Birmingham Children's Theater, and they needed individuals to be their ushers. And so we send out small groups or small cohorts in groups of 6 to 8. We transport them out to this location, and the pathway navigator is there with them, and they are there performing the task. We pay them for their internship time, but they're able to go out, get those community-based skills, get the work skills, and really it shows. We have seen the data has provided tremendous points of growth and preparation for individuals to be able to leave that program and to find community employment. So it's really great. We blend that classroom learning and the hands-on practice to really pair that with meaningful community engagement, so that individuals can develop a broader community base. It's really powerful.
I mean, it's almost like an incubator, right? You really are, you have people in there. I mean, this, what you do for them is key. It could be key for anybody, right? So, but it really is just a safe space to succeed, but also, to your point, to fail. Because
Yes.
a lot of times if you fail and no one gives you the feedback, they won't give you another chance. And at least here in your incubator, you can gain your strength, but you can also understand what your areas of development are so that you can work on them for when you're ready. So we have one question.
Yes.
Anita, let's see, Anita, do you want to come back and read the one question? Let's see.
Sure.
Okay.
So again, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful, wonderful session. I'm still blown away about your 16-year-old student that you mentioned. So just because of time, our question is, can you please speak to the idea of unseen disability? It's something one encounters as perceptions have changed over the years.
Yes. So I can speak to that on a very personal level. So now I've been living 36 years with type 1 diabetes, and so it's a physical disability, but it is unseen. People, when they first meet me, they have no idea. I have a systemic autoimmune situation. You aren't able to see this as clearly online, but I have vitiligo, Sjogren's. I mean, there's just a long list of things. And so there are some things that I've had to, especially as I've grown in wisdom, not age, but in wisdom, some things that I've had to really adapt to in the work setting, things that I would never have wanted to have to kind of step back from, but I've had to. And so it's really made me sensitive to those unseen disabilities. So, once again, it's about, and I think if we have time, we'll talk about the self-advocacy part of that. It's so important.
We have 5 minutes, so throw that in there.
Okay, yes. All right. So one of the things that we really try to push is our self-advocacy piece of that. Knowing your strengths, knowing your limitations, knowing that your voice matters. People have to be their own self-advocates. Each of us, whether we have a disability or not, we have to learn self-advocacy. And some of us are really great at it and some of us struggle. And those with disabilities sometimes want to shove it down because they feel like it's going to hinder their success. And sometimes it would. But you have to find a place where you're able to be a self-advocate and still be valued and not be punished for that. So I encourage individuals with disabilities to speak up about what they need, realizing that accommodations aren't favors, they're tools for equity and independence. If you broke your arm, you may need some temporary accommodations. If you have knee surgery, you need some temporary accommodations. If you receive a cancer diagnosis, you're going to need some temporary accommodations, hopefully very temporary, and you'll be right back on course in remission. But these are things that we focus here at workshops and that I try to do out in the greater community about creating safe spaces to practice that self-expression. What does that look like? How would you approach an employer to let them know that you need certain accommodations or certain help? But it's also about inviting employers and coworkers to be open to that. And if someone starts sharing, to know how is that handled within your organization, within your company? How do you handle that as an individual, as a human? And so I think it's important to have those conversations before an individual would actually need that, to have that communicated openly in an organization and openly among your teams, I think is very very vital and would be very beneficial.
Yeah, so I'll just to bring it home to here, everything that you say, I completely agree with. When I started here 4 years ago, I talked about my vision for this department, and it was to ensure that our employees felt empowered and fulfilled. And I do my best with what we do to try to get there. And so to your point around self-advocacy, understanding where you need help, understanding where you may need someone to help you advocate, that's what my department's here for. And so I will reach out. I'll say to the people who are on the line and those who will listen to this later on that we are here for that. And my team, particularly the two HR business partners, Amy Rubin and Jason Alvarez, are there to help you with that. So I'll say that. And maybe just because we only have 2 minutes left, maybe I'll take one kind of final sentence and I'll let you have the final wrap up. But a lot of what I hear you say, and again, much of what we're talking about is around the disability community, but I think it is just around people, which is what I love about this stuff. And I think part of what I like to say to people about themselves, but also about others, is learning to give people grace. We need to give ourselves our own grace in our day to day, because we can't always get to everything that we want to get done. Sometimes we make mistakes. Sometimes we have a lack of information, but also it's the importance of giving others grace, because you don't know what they're dealing with, seen or unseen. And if we allowed everyone that same grace, then we would treat each other with so much more kindness.
Absolutely.
That is my closing words. What would you like to say in your closing words before you leave us?
Yes. I would say that the goal is not just to include people with disabilities, seen or unseen, but to co-create environments where every voice is valued and heard. And especially in the world we live in today, being willing to listen to those voices and get back to that, where it's okay if you look different than I do, or you sound different, or your needs are different from mine, that it's okay. Because when we all have that seat at the table, disability or not disability, when we're all there shaping the policies and the programs and the decisions, organizations and society becomes naturally just more innovative, empathetic, and effective. And true inclusion really happens, and not just for disabilities, but for all of us, when we replace the mindset of helping with the idea of partnering. I think that's really the biggest thing I wish everybody would take away, that it is a partnership, and that we, every day we're faced with as humans that we may not be able to keep doing what we've always done. And in the face of age, in the face of things that happen to us, and whether that be situations like my father, or situations like my own unseen disabilities, things that we can't control, but coming together as humans, we can make such a powerful difference.
Love the idea of co-creation. Well, with that, Christy, I thank you for your time and your words of wisdom and the contributions that you're making within your space, within Alabama, but more broadly. So Have a wonderful rest of your week and happy Halloween.
Yes, absolutely. You all as well. And as we embark on the holiday season coming up, I just wish everyone peace and joy and just contentment within the realm of joy that you all have and share with others.
Amen. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.